So we are starting this What Sold video on eBay and with a baseball cap, which if you've watched me before, you know is not an unusual type of thing for us to sell based on the number that we find and list. And this one actually sold for $22. It sold, I think, pretty quickly the next day after it was listed. And it says it was a repeat buyer, so that's kind of nice. And anyway, $22 for that baseball cap. Next up is this Lucky Legend shirt. It might look familiar. I probably featured it in a What Sold before. It had gotten sold and then returned. I think they returned it as just didn't like it or it didn't fit or something like that. So we relisted it and it sold again, and this time it sold for $30 and we got good feedback on it. So the buyer is keeping it this time. Next sale is another hat. So this one's just a Missouri River, Montana hat. Nothing super special about this one. If you've seen any of our hat videos, we source a lot of our hats at our little local clearance center thrift store, and it's kind of set up like the bins, Goodwill bins, but much smaller, but the same kind of idea. And we don't pay, it's not by the pound. It's, you know, kind of a lump sum. You could fill a whole black trash bag for $10, but we don't usually find that much, so we pay less than 10. So our items are usually pennies, like 25 cents a piece, depending on how many things we get. So this one actually sold for $14. It also says it was a repeat buyer, so actually it was the same buyer as the other hat. So that's why it was a repeat buyer. This was the second hat that he bought, and now eBay has them both labeled as repeat buyer. And it was like a day or so after, maybe a day after he bought the other one, but I can't remember if it was, did we ship them together? No, I think it was a day later. And they had to get shipped separately. So next up is another hat. So it was a slow week. Oh my goodness. This was the week directly after the week where we had our best eBay sale ever, which you'll want to watch that video if you haven't seen it yet. But that sale was a $1,700 sale. And sometimes what happens is when we have, I think I mentioned this in another video, but when we have a really good sale, higher than normal, higher than our average selling price, it tends to slow down on eBay for us after that. So it's almost like, you know, you have a kind of limit as to your earnings, unless you do something major, like totally increase the amount of items that you have listed, and then your level of earnings kind of will go up with it. So we have noticed that over and over, you know, we'll have one really good sale and then that's like the sale. We'll just joke around. We'll be like, you know what, I guess that's it. We're done. We're done for the week. We're not going to get any more sales. But immediately following that sale, we still sold a couple good things. But then the week after, you know, a few days after that, it really slowed down. But it also slowed down on a lot of the other platforms as well. So I don't think I can blame that phenomenon completely. I think it was just a bad week, and a lot of resellers are talking about slow weeks. So this is my eBay, right? So you can see up at the top, I sold 10 whole items on eBay that entire week, and I actually had 3 days with no sales at all. So it was a little disconcerting. And a lot of the sales that came in were just these smaller value sales anyway. This hat sold for $18.99, and it was just a Ireland hat. That's it. But we sourced it in the same place that we sourced the other one. This was one of our actually pretty good sales. These two mugs, the brand is, or the maker is Holt Howard, HH, and Holt Howard's a big name in the vintage kitsch arena. So he has some pixies that sell really well, some Santa type items, that company, Holt Howard. But these were in our own mugs. I had these for a while, just kind of hanging, used them a few times, and we just decided, I think they moved from, when we moved, they moved from our personal collection to be listed. And so we got them listed, and they were actually worth more than we expected. So the pair of them sold for $50. And next up was another hat. A beanie hat that sold for $16. We did take a lot of offers that week that were just lower because we just wanted some cash flow and just kind of keep things moving. I'm not saying this was worth more than 16. I'm just saying if we got a fairly reasonable offer, we were taking it. Another beanie sold by Mammut, Mammut. This one just sold for $20. And then here's a hardware item. I don't necessarily recommend just selling one cabinet pole for $4.99. That's kind of left over from a time where we were listing a bunch of hardware that we had come across. And it was just, we got this at the bins. And so it was just in a lot with a bunch of other different kinds of hardware. And so I think my husband just listed it while he was listing those other things, but I wouldn't just pick this up and list it by itself. And then our last sale on eBay for that week was a bracelet. It actually sold fairly quickly. The brand is Lenora Dame. I don't know anything about that brand. I sourced this online from another, like a jewelry seller, and I got $21.24 for this bracelet. Most of the other ones listed were gold tone, and mine was silver tone, so that might have helped it sell a little bit quicker than some of the other ones. But anyway, $21.24. I always like a quick sale on things like that. Then over on Posh, bucket hat by Urban Outfitters. We're continuing the hat theme that week, I guess. And corduroy, it was a very wide wale. So just kind of trendy, not vintage or anything like that, but that sold for $25. And another one of these mugs, and I had sold one of these to a viewer, and I had two, and the second one, this is like sold maybe a couple weeks after that other one, and it sold on Poshmark for a change, and it sold for $15. And another hat. This one was only $12. This was one of our early pickups from when we first kind of started paying attention to hats. So it's been listed a while. And we just thought Caterpillar, like it should, machinery, right? Machines, like we just thought it would do better because that actually is a good workwear kind of theme. Cat machines, cat machinery. But not that one so much. And then a pair of North Face cargo pants. They were vintage, a little bit older, maybe more like Y2K than anything, but cargo, and those sold for $25. And a good price for a pair of shorts. These were new with tags, and they sold for $50. The brand is Topo Designs, and I think it's just a brand that it's like from REI or something like that. Let me get let's see. It's always nice when it has the tags, but here's the little label. It says it right on there, Topo Designs. But I found out they had a pretty high retail price, so happy to get $50 for those, especially on the week we had. And the week was February 5th through 11th, if you're keeping track. It was beginning of February, so kind of good to keep these in mind and for ourselves as well, seeing if there's patterns. Some years are completely different. The pandemic years were completely different than any other time period for reselling. So they're kind of hard to compare the last few years with what a normal ebb and flow of a reselling business is. But to just kind of keep in mind, January usually does pretty well as far as the momentum from fourth quarter kind of keeps going a little bit, but then February can kind of start to slow down. People may start getting their tax returns, their refunds, things like that might happen. But then April is usually a rough month as well. There's taxes that people owe that they're paying. There's spring break. things like that. So I always remember April as being like a kind of month. So I'm trying to mentally prepare for that as well. Now this was a really good sale for that week for Poshmark. We were happy for this one. This one was a surprise. So I got this at our little clearance center. I usually look in the accessories. I look in the belts and I look, in the scarves and the ties and hats and things like that. And so I didn't really know the brand Neff. I knew it was kind of like skateboarder, that kind of vibe. But I don't know. It was a big spell out Neff, and the pattern on it were birds with crowns. It was unusual, right? And when I'm dealing with the clearance center, I am paying pennies, like I said. And so I'm like, you know what, let's figure this out. So, the type of thing, like we have Zoomies in the title, right? So that type of store, that type of item. And then we did research on it, and it's a Mac Miller collaboration. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's crazy. Some of the prices that we saw for some of his stuff. So just kind of hard to, it wasn't a super common item. And it was probably from like 2010, 14, I don't know, somewhere in there. Not completely recently, but not Y2K or anything. So I just kind of had it in mind for like a Depop type item. And I've got a lot of attention on eBay, and then I send out an automatic offer on my Poshmark listings, and it sold for $61. And I love that. So that was awesome. Over on Etsy, we had a few pattern sales. This Simplicity costume pattern sold for $10. This craft pattern, so cheesy, sold for $20. It's a vacuum cleaner cover. If you want to have your vacuum cleaner covered by this cow dressed like a woman, okay, if you want to, or you can cover your sewing machine with a similar type item. And there's still a market for stuff like this, and so that one sold for $20. This Vogue pattern sold for $15. I listed that week. It sold fairly quickly. And this leotard skating dress, $15 by Stretch and Sew. This brand, Stretch and Sew, when I look for things from them to list, if I do pick them up, I usually stick to this type of thing. Leotards, well, this is a skating dress, but this is for girls. I've sold them before in women's sizes. And, like, I don't know, lingerie or underwear, things like that is kind of what I limit the Stretch and Sew stuff to. I'm sure I've got some in my stash that could be listed that are other things, but I might just lot those up anyway. So here's the other Emmelox of Norway dish, the little 4-inch metal bowl. Here's the sticker again. So I had sold the other one. We sold the other one, I think, on eBay, and I believe, and it was, I think, in the last what sold, and I told you I had way overpaid for these because you don't find stuff like this in Montana super often, and so it was just kind of fun. But anyway, they both sold, and this one sold for $16.99 on Etsy. Sold another one of these faux wood, or the faux bois vintage alarm clocks, and they sell better on Etsy generally for us as far as prices, but we have sold a few on eBay. But just kind of a basic kind of look, kind of a dated look, but people like them. And we do have some more that recently got listed, but I don't know that we've seen any action on Etsy for them. So we'll see. And then this item was totally one of those busts. Like, I think my husband picked this up on a road trip and he kind of overpaid for it. And then it just sold for $25. And it was fairly large. It's an ice bucket, but it looks like a beer tankard. It's just kind of silly. But not worth a ton, and definitely, not worth packing and all that kind of stuff for $25. So you live and learn. Over on Ruby Lane, we had a coffee mug sale for $15. This was just a stoneware, vintage stoneware coffee mug with like a fishing village scene. And I didn't really need to do that, but anyway. Let's go to the next one. And then this was a nice sale on Ruby Lane. This little pin, teeny tiny. It's a sterling fleur-de-lis watch pin locket. So what that means is, if you look on the back, it's got the pin, but it also has this hook. So a watch could hang. You could attach a little pocket watch type thing to it for, usually for a woman. You can see with it in my hand that it was pretty small. It was marked sterling. And the enamel on the front, when you see this kind of, these lines in the enamel, that style is called guilloche. And that is collectible. People look for that. And this was in really good condition. So sold that for $50. It took a little while, maybe a month or so, to sell that. We started cross-posting a few more things over to Mercari, even though we vowed we weren't, because we just don't like the platform, but we're kind of in that mode of like, we just need to get sales from wherever we can get sales. And we have this Skylanders Xbox One thing. Don't ask me what it's for. $24 is what that sold for. We paid $1 at a thrift store. And the other Mercari sale was not that week, so that was not, never mind. I just had one on Mercari. And then Depop, I had one sale on Depop, which were these vintage Izod club shorts, Izod Club. They were like high-waisted mom shorts, and nice pretty pattern on those. So finally moved those. Those took a little while. They were kind of like a 90s Y2K type style. Okay, that was it. That was probably my shortest what sold video ever because not much sold that week. I even debated putting this week together with the next week, but I thought, no, let's just talk about what it was, right? So the next week was a little bit better. We had a fewer higher dollar sales, and we I think by the weekend we had started picking up again. So that'll be in the next what sold video. So let me know in the comments down below, how was your first week in February? Was it as bad as ours? What do you think contributes to the slow sales in February? So let me know, and I will talk to you guys soon, and I hope you're having a great reselling week this week at least.